Sekeres Price for Tuesday, April 16th, 2024. Coming to you from the Nation Network studio, built by Arbor Lee here at the iconic Wall Center in downtown Vancouver. And whether it's a gala or a board meeting, Wall Center offers 30 unique event rooms. Contact them, learn more. Sales at wallcenter.com. Matt Sekeres alongside Blake Price. Great ass hitting switches and conducting things with intern Sean Chessman. We got a big show coming up for you. It's all brought to you by Applewood.
Applewood Infinity in Richmond as the 2024 QX60 up for grabs. Matt knows about that vehicle. Lease it at 0.99% for 24 months on all trims. Go as fancy as you like. It's all at Applewood Infinity in Richmond, and it's all good at Applewood.
Fantastic vehicle. Poll question today. Do you want to see towel power in the playoffs? Yes or no? You can vote at Sekeres Price on Twitter and YouTube. And we're asking this question because...
Explain to the Gen Zers what towel power is.
So, 1982, Vancouver Canucks, Chicago Blackhawks, officiating going against them. Head coach Roger Nielsen takes a white towel from the bench, puts it on an end of a hockey stick, raises it high above his head in mock surrender. Becomes an iconic moment for that team that goes to the 82 final.
They come home for the next home game.
Right. They come home. John Shannon and others ply the crowd with white towels. People begin waving them. Iconic Canucks moment. Now immortalized with the Roger Nielsen statue on the plaza. But here's the thing. We started to hear this a fair bit in the last couple of Canucks playoff runs. Needless to say, they did not go very well. A 4-game sweep at the hands of the San Jose Sharks, a 5-game loss to the LA Kings in 2012. That was coming back after winning the President's Trophy and, of course, falling 1 game short in the Stanley Cup final. We started hearing a lot, don't like the tradition, don't like that we wave a white towel, a form of surrender. Intervening 9 years between playoff games at Rogers Arena. And we wonder how many out there want a clean break and a move on from tradition, particularly since other teams have now adopted their own forms of towel power. Anaheim, they called it foul towels. You get it?
Yeah.
WL.
Yeah. Did the Hurricanes do something like that? I can't remember.
Mm-hmm.
Others have done it.
Mm-hmm. It would appear in the early voting, you folks love you some towel power.
The Stanch and Weinart replying to the poll question. Okay, what are we doing here?
Ratioed.
Chayton says, towel power coming out to you two is the only way
a
playoff game in Vancouver should be done. You think they'll bring back you two? Like
that's, I don't know.
It's been a while since we've heard you two.
Well, I mean, I gotta say the voting here warms my heart because I'm someone who loves and appreciates history and tradition. And one thing that's become really clear with younger generations is they don't have a lot of regard for history.
Mm.
They care about what's happened since they've been alive or since they've had understanding. They're very much more a point forward group than they are a look back group. So I am quite delighted to see so many people who enjoy towel power. It gets the fans involved. It's been a Vancouver thing for more than 40 years. No, not the ultimate originators, because, of course, the Steelers had the terrible towels in the 1970s, but came out of an organic moment.
Yes.
And incidentally, I mean, God bless Roger Nielsen, because you love those moments of charisma that come out in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Show us your personality a little bit. For anybody who knew the late, great Roger Nielsen, he had a wicked sense of humor. And what a moment. I mean, to this day, you see the video each and every playoff season of Roger and the towels. So, vote at YouTube and Twitter. Grady, you're in on this too? You're for towel power?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
The Predators, if they are to be the first round opponents for the Vancouver Canucks, you remember what their playoff tradition is. adorn a vehicle out front of the arena with the logos of the opponents.
And they smash it. They take a couple of bucks from everyone, give it to charity, and they take
you get to beat up the car.
Right, I remember that.
With a baseball bat.
And they have the catfish, too.
Right.
Yes.
Must say, when we were there in 2011 for the second round series, that was a pretty hype crowd. Wow.
Good crowd.
Not everybody necessarily understood every nuance of hockey, but boy, were they loud. Boy, were they passionate. And the city was behind that team.
Yeah.
And of course, it's an awfully fun city to visit, particularly if you love your country Western music.
And that's the one plus side, that if there is this expected delay of a Tuesday start for the Vancouver Canucks, and they're to take on Nashville, does give you 4 days to arrange some plans to get out there if you wanted to.
That is something that has come back this year. Canuck Nation is traveling again. Sure, there were smatterings over the last decade or 9 years, particularly in the easily accessible buildings. There's been, it's been turned out in Seattle, but of course that's a drive. But you hear a smattering in LA, you hear the smattering in Phoenix, Anaheim, Vegas, the Canadian Easterns, well, all the Canadian cities, really. But Canuck Nation getting back on the wagon and traveling with their club, that's something that we've seen come back this year with this extraordinary Canuck season, which we will get into more in today's Welcome Mat, which is going to be on the YouTube show here. So let's get to today's top story. Chance to clinch on Fan Appreciation Night at Rogers Arena. The Canucks and their arch rival Calgary Flames, right?
I mean, a chief
rivalry right now, but I'm not sure there's a team over history that has had a bigger rivalry with. Thatcher Demko returns. He missed 14 games with that knee injury. We'll hear from JT Miller here in a second in terms of what getting him back means. It's an opportunity to win a 50th game on the season. It's an opportunity with 2 wins here Thursday in Winnipeg as well to tie the second best Vancouver Canucks season ever, tying that 2012 team. And of course, Fan Appreciation Night and the team awards, including team MVP, best defenseman, most exciting, and unsung hero. All of that to come at the arena this evening.
Now, it bears mentioning, if you are of the mind, and it seems increasingly like most people are of this mind, that you want the Vancouver Canucks to face the Nashville Predators. The Predators are guaranteed now to be the top wild card in the Western Conference.
Yes.
They are locked into that spot. The do-si-do that can occur is third in the Pacific to the second wild card spot between LA and Vegas. The Canucks can theoretically still finish second in the Pacific and theoretically finish first or second in the conference. So, if you are of the mind, I want the Canucks to face the Predators, you want an OTL tonight.
Yeah, because here's the thing. 2 points tonight for the Canucks clinches the Pacific and keeps them in the hunt for the top spot in the West with Dallas.
But do you want that?
1 point clinches the Pacific, but means Dallas is out of reach.
It guarantees.
So the highest, and they would be locked in at that point as the number 1 seed in the Pacific, the number 2 overall seed in the Western Conference, getting that first wild card.
The matchup set. They get 1 point tonight. The matchup is set.
Right.
It's the Canucks versus Preds.
0 points. They would need a point in Winnipeg on Thursday to clinch the division, depending on what the Oilers do, because the Oilers would still be left in the hunt if the Canucks lose this game in regulation. Let's hear from Miller on Demko, and then we'll come back and do the rest of
the math,
the rest of the Western Conference and Pacific stakes here, because it can get a little overwhelming. Here's JT Miller, the Canucks 100-point man, on getting Thatcher Demko, the starting goaltender, back.
I've been super lucky to play with, Henrik Lundqvist and Andrei Vasilevsky, and he obviously fits the same bill. And it's a ton of, athletic goalies that are talented, but his work ethic and his brain and his mindset is what separates him from other goalies, and I've seen that from a couple of really good ones myself, and he obviously fits the bill. So he works harder than anybody, and he competes harder than anybody. And if you put those together with an athletic person, obviously you get some results, and he's been unreal for us ever since I've been here.
Yeah.
He is confirmed by Rick Tocchet as the starter, went through all the proper starters routines at the game day skate, so he is ready to roll.
And once again, while it has been a decade of despair here in Vancouver with this hockey team, the one constant has been goaltending.
Yeah.
For a franchise that searched for a goaltender for so long before Roberto got here in 2005, 2006, middle part of the decade. You know, the Canucks had a nice run with Kirk McLean at one point, had a nice run with King Richard Brodeur at one point. But really, since Louis got here, the goaltending has been extraordinary. It's coming on 20 years now, Blake.
Yeah.
Roberto Luongo, exceptional. Corey Schneider when he had to play. Like, go back and look at Schneider's numbers here. They're mind-boggling. Ryan Miller did a very professional job with a very bad team for several years.
Jacob Markstrom, a very professional job with a very bad
Jacob
team.
Markstrom steps in, realizes all the potential that made him at one point the best goaltending prospect in the world, and really redeems that trade of Luongo. That winds up being a good trade for them because of how well Markstrom plays.
And how much worse would the teams have been under Miller and Markstrom if they weren't Miller and Markstrom?
My God, Blake. I shudder to think of how bad And then, of course, we get to the post-pandemic season. Canucks ownership turns off the taps, won't re-sign Jacob Markstrom and a number of other free agents. But Thatcher Demko, based on playing half that series against the Vegas Golden Knights, people feel good about him. He ascends. There's just no drop-off.
Yeah.
And we'll talk goaltending later in the program with Kevin Woodley of In Goal Media, who, of course, is your goaltending expert in this market. All right. So
you confident Demko's Demko tonight? As soon as tonight? Or are you thinking he's going to need this week to sort of...
I put it this way, and we're going to talk about this later in the block. I think irrespective of the result tonight and what's at stake or isn't at stake, I think Thatcher Demko has to play Thursday as well.
Yeah.
I'd want him to get every minute available here in these last two games.
I want him the only guy playing Thursday.
Well,
ideally.
no, honestly, if it goes to plan, Thatcher Demko should be the only goalie taking the crease for the Vancouver Canucks for the remainder of this season. Casey DeSmith's work should be done here. And if it's not, that probably means bad news for the Vancouver
If there's
Canucks.
a blowout, I like a third period blowout manifesting itself. I wouldn't mind like tonight.
Either way, or
no, tonight. Like if tonight they've got a multi-goal lead, because that's a great thing. If he only has to play 2 periods tonight and they've got a 4-goal lead in the third, I'd be tempted there, but not necessary. Getting back into routine, good thing for goalies.
yeah. So getting back to the Western Conference and the stakes at hand here. Edmonton destroyed San Jose last night, Monday. We knew there was a world where if Edmonton loses, the Canucks would have nothing to play for with regards to the Pacific tonight, but that didn't happen. So now on to the opposition. As you mentioned, Nashville is the number 1 wild card. They're locked into position. Vegas has Chicago and Anaheim remaining, which is not exactly a difficult final road to hoe here. If they win those hockey games, they finish 3rd in the Pacific.
Yep.
And they play Edmonton.
Delicious.
Locked into 2nd.
Most likely. They're not locked into 2nd yet, but they will be, yeah.
They're not locked into 2nd yet?
Edmonton? No.
Oh, yeah, of course, because they can leapfrog the Canucks. Right. Vegas and LA can finish 3rd in the Pacific, or they can finish with the 2nd wild card. Los Angeles, of course, was a loser on Monday. So that has opened things up a little bit more. Lost the Minnesota Wild 3-1. That has opened things up a little bit more for the Vegas Golden Knights. And the Kings, they play their final game of the season against Chicago on Thursday.
Yeah.
Chicago,
Now, I know you laugh.
I laugh a little bit. Well, for two reasons. Number one, because the Blackhawks are like San Jose, comically bad. But secondly, that we have these specific teams that are finishing up with a central team.
I'll say this though, every team. It wasn't the last game of the season with the Sharks last night. No team wants to finish the season on a loss. It's the last taste in the mouth. You know that you've got nothing else to prepare for. You know that if you block a shot, doesn't matter. You don't have to play a game in 2 days. You do get the best, I think, out of even the terrible teams. And there's no move in the Blackhawks from where they are in the standings, so it doesn't affect their lottery odds at all. So I think you get it. And same thing for who the Ducks are playing somebody important as well. Vegas.
Yeah.
So like those two teams are locked.
Yeah. Vegas
So-
has Chicago tonight.
Yeah.
And that game faces off the same time as the Canucks and Flames. And then Vegas has Anaheim Thursday.
Yeah.
On the final day of the National Hockey League regular season. In fact, it is only Western Conference teams playing on the final day of the regular season Thursday, which is why, in part, many are now speculating that the Canucks playoff series is going to start here on Tuesday. Stanley Cup playoffs start Saturday, but it's the Eastern teams that finish up on Wednesday that are looks and sounds now are most likely going to get the Saturday assignment.
I'm going to be surprised if it's Tuesday. I know, and there's a bunch of people saying Tuesday.
Yep.
And I hear that. I've never seen a 3-day lag for the
Mhm.
game, for the first game of a series.
But it is a different year. Remember, this whole season's been pushed back some.
Mhm.
Normally, we're already into the Stanley Cup playoffs. So I think that has an effect. I think that the season ends on a Thursday and not a Sunday is having an effect. Obviously, building availability has an effect. The Edmonton Oilers apparently can't play on Saturday because they have a conflict with their building. And we're not too far down the road of new broadcast partners in the United States who have,
A
needless
say,
to say, that
yeah.
well, they have a say in part because they also have other programming that they're planning, particularly ESPN. I mean, ESPN is got all sorts of programming, and everyone, of course, wants to fit the hockey around the greater priorities in the U.S., namely basketball.
Two problems again. You can't start a bunch of series on Saturday and then wait 3 more days till another one starts on Tuesday. Secondarily, the Nashville Predators will cry bloody murder, I think, that they have to wait all the way until Tuesday after finishing their season last night.
Mhm.
They're going to say, what, like you've put us behind here with 7 days.
Yes, but of course the Canucks and others would cry bloody murder if they're playing Thursday and then hosting a game on Saturday.
Right.
It's not going to work out for all teams, ideally. We know that much. And, let's face it, I think it would have been and could still be an advantage that Nashville finished on Monday and sat there and watched the rest of the league vie it out over 3 more nights because, the Stanley Cup playoffs is a long grind. I think I would prefer having a rest on the way in, knowing full well that I might be playing an opponent that's a little bit more tenderized.
There is a point where rust becomes rust. What is
Fair.
that point? It's a matter of opinion and debate. I would think Sunday or Monday is a happy medium for all.
Mm-hmm.
Monday in particular gives the Canucks the time to come back from Winnipeg, obviously, enjoy a little bit of rest, and then get your feet underneath you.
Yes.
And yet it doesn't put you so far behind that,
Right.
The series, if there's a 4 or 5 game series that begins on Saturday, my goodness, they're going to be sitting on their hands for 10 days for another series to finish.
That all said, I mean, a couple things there. Yes, the big concern was having to come back from Winnipeg on Thursday night and play a Saturday game, which is a hell of a turnaround for a team that has home ice advantage.
Yeah.
I mean, you almost wipe out whatever advantage is gained by asking them to turn around in such short order. Secondly, I would hope that the National Hockey League, in negotiations with their broadcast partners on the schedule, point out that the higher seeded teams, the teams with home ice, should be deferred to when you're looking at a situation where either side of the equation might grumble with whatever start date you're considering.
Yeah.
I would hope that's the case.
Incidentally,
There's a part of me that just thinks Gary and Bill would say, hey, whatever works best for the U.S. broadcaster, if it happens to work best for the U.S. team, then that's okay too. We know the hosers up in Canada will watch regardless.
Incidentally, the Predators finishing their season yesterday, being blown out of the water in the first period by the Pittsburgh Penguins, only to see a couple of goals pulled off the board due to goaltender interference penalties. It could have been much worse. They go down 4-2. They're outshot 38-30. But it could have been way sooner. And that's an .895 save percentage night for UC Saros in his final game. So that,
but of course, the Penguins are playing for their playoff lives,
Totally.
trying to sneak in, and Nashville knows they're in.
But for all the worry about the unbeaten streak of the Preds from a few weeks back, they've been pretty mediocre since
They've
then.
been very mediocre.
So
they've been very mediocre.
For those that do want them, they just got more evidence, I think, last night.
In fact, depending on where you want to draw the line in their schedule, in some cases they've been poor.
Yeah. You could certainly say that.
Let's get to JT Miller talking about the fans. And as we talked about, Canuck Nation traveling again, but also the spirit, the energy, the enthusiasm has been back at Rogers Arena this season, and really from the jump. Beating the Oilers on home ice, night one, Brock Besser 4 goals. Then going to Edmonton, Casey DeSmith standing on his head, getting 2 victories against a team that everybody had as the Pacific Division, well, if not favorite, co-favorite with Vegas, and a Stanley Cup favorite or short odd contender. Really from that moment, I remember I went to a Vancouver Canadians event like the week that they were on the road there playing the Florida teams in Philly, and talking to a number of folks, sports fans in the community, business owners, who were talking about how their tickets were already in demand. And it's fantastic because for a lot of the last 9 years, I know some season ticket holders have talked about how it's been a chore to go to games, particularly late in the season, that it's been difficult to give tickets away, particularly on weeknights, Monday through Wednesday. Those home games weren't really resonating. And in a lot of cases, you go to the games, and particularly if you sat in the lower bowl, people on their phones, people just not necessarily engaged with the activity on the ice. All that changed this year. Here's JT Miller on Fan Appreciation Night.
They're a passionate fan base, and I love that about them. And they've had, we've had unreal support this year. They've had some awesome moments as a fan base, and obviously they're getting excited for what's coming in the future. So I'd like to have one more good home game in the regular season for them.
Yeah, send them into the playoffs with a good feeling after a victory.
Let me ask you this. Is there a risk tonight? Demko's coming back. Is there a risk that the team lets down in front of him because they're like, phew, Thatcher's back?
I wouldn't think so. I wouldn't think on the first night. I would think this would have everyone's attention.
Still something to be accomplished.
Still something to be accomplished. Happy to have him back. I think if that slipped into their game, it would come at some point after the first start.
Yeah.
Maybe Thursday, but even then, it's final game of the regular season. Now, if they have nothing to play for Thursday, that could be a different matter. And did you see the list of players the Carolina Hurricanes are resting because they're locked in?
It's extensive. In fact, I don't know how they ice a full lineup without that. But again, for Thursday, Demko to me is still in the lineup.
Demko for sure. You've talked about sitting Hughes, not giving him that final opportunity to put a punctuation mark on the Norris Trophy candidacy. I understand what you're saying. I think it's good practice. I also think there are some other considerations that Hughes and the club may push back on. Number one, he's the captain. Number two, it's a chance to have that 82 beside his name. And more on all the Canucks who have played 82 games here in a bit. So, and of course, could possibly still have a shot at first place in the conference, depending on how this evening goes and depending on how the Dallas Stars go. So right now, I'm doubtful they would do that, Blake, but I hear your reasoning and I think it's sound.
I don't think there's a Norris Trophy vote to be lost at this point for him. Let me ask you this, though.
Okay.
Like what if
they're due Friday?
Yeah.
So it's the final hours to actually.
But you could have submitted it already.
No, you could have. But here's the other thing. The game Thursday is the final game of the NHL's. Oh, sorry. No, there's several teams there. Where's Makar? Yeah. So Makar plays at 6:30 Eastern on Thursday. Canucks play at 5 p.m. Or sorry, 6:30 Pacific. Canucks play at 5 Pacific.
They're finished first, yeah.
Yeah, they finished first.
I
would not want Cale Makar to go out and score a hat trick in that final game and leave people with that taste in their mouths, with Hughes sitting back here with his feet up in Vancouver.
Well, that's why it'd be nice if Hughes had a bigger night tonight, like a 3-point night tonight.
Yes.
Gave himself that padding, and if Cale Makar is a 6-point night in the final game of the season, I mean, so be it. I mean, what do you do? But I think I would do that. Let me ask you this though. Demko gets a shutout tonight.
Is it place Thursday?
No, but is there Vezina votes on the line?
I think there are Vezina votes on the line for Thatcher Demco, irrespective of the performance tonight. I just don't think many or any of those votes will be first place votes. So, Professional Hockey Writers Association does not vote on the Vezina. That is the general managers. More on this with Kevin Woodley coming up. Professional Hockey Writers Association does vote, however, on the first, second, and third NHL All-Star teams. So as I was looking at my ballot for the 3 goaltenders, look, Connor Hellebuck, number 1. He's been the best goalie this year. It's indisputable. I had Demko number 2. But I think there will be some who have him number 3, and I think, and in part based on rank homerism, I think you'll have some leave him entirely off of the 3 goaltenders selected as NHL All-Stars this year. I say that because goaltending in particular, in the with myopic markets, it's very hard to see past that goaltender and not think, oh, where would they be without this guy? And so you put him on the ballot. Like, I would bet there will be Nashville people who vote for UC Saros.
With a scintillating final week, Thatcher Demko can. He's already tied in shutouts, can beat him in shutouts. With a spectacular week, can probably tie him in save percentage, and can tie him in wins.
Hellebuck,
yes.
Yeah.
The stats can almost be identical across the board, and you're saying it doesn't matter.
I don't think it's going to matter. No.
Just because of sentiment. People have already made their minds up.
Well, A, because of sentiment, A, because of results to this point. And as you say, I think a lot of ballots are probably filled in, some perhaps even submitted. General managers vote on the ward and tend to look at more traditional stats.
I'm looking at the traditional stats. That's what I'm pointing out. And there's a chance that they are even Steven right across the board if Demko has a good week.
Yep. And also, I think, well, in that scenario, they're going to look and say, well, Demko played 51 games and Hellebuck played 60.
Which speaks to winning percentage, but yeah.
I think that's going to.
I think it's just I think he's been out of mind too long in some ways. I think that's going to be the biggest thing.
And hey, don't think for a second there isn't some East Coast bias or West Coast bias that comes into play, that a lot of people will not have seen Thatcher Demko as much as Connor Hellebuck this year because of start time of games.
Yeah.
And honestly, like in some cases, I wonder whether the GM just hands the ballot to somebody in their charge and says, fill it out.
I think that probably happens in places.
But, look, on the All-Star goaltender side of things, I think Saros is going to get votes in Nashville. I think Shesterkin is going to get votes in New York. Hell, I wouldn't be surprised if Bobrovsky gets some votes in Florida, because you take a look at his peripherals and they're very good. He's second in the league in wins, .915 save percentage, .237 goals against. In fact, the numbers compare right there with Connor Hellebuck in some cases. Jordan Binnington, I believe, is the analytics darling this year. I think he's going to get some votes. And I also wouldn't be surprised to see Vasilevsky and Ottinger and these sorts of guys collect a handful of votes as well. Not to mention Skinner in Edmonton. So I think you got a lot of factors that come into play here. I do suspect that Demko will be a Vezina finalist. I think he'll be top 3.
I would hope.
I just don't think he's got any chance of number 1.
He was the Vezina choice through 40 games, so it'd be odd if he wasn't even there on the.
I think that's
stage,
fair.
So.
Now, as for Rick Tocchet, I think he's home free as the NHL Coach of the Year and Jack Adams Award winner. In fact, NHL.com had a poll of its writers, and Tocchet more than doubled up Andrew Brunette of Nashville in votes. 5 points for a first place vote, and 4 for second onwards. He more than doubled up Brunette for the Jack Adams. So I think Tocchet is absolutely going to be photographed with the trophy at the end of the year. I think Quinn Hughes has a very good chance. I am a little concerned about the Makar reputation, not to mention the possibility of Makar having a great final week here and leaving that taste in the mind. I think a lot of people are also going to vote on reputation or perceived reputation. And I think in some cases that's going to work against Quinn Hughes, because I don't think everybody is yet up to speed on how good defensively he is. And what's the scoring race with Hughes at 91 and Makar at 89?
Yeah.
So
that's what I'm saying. Like a
you
3
really
night tonight, and he's safe.
You put the scoring race to bed, and hopefully the Norris alongside. Yeah, because I think he deserves it. And I was thinking about this because was it you or Grady who asked me, are you going to put Quinn Hughes on your Hart Trophy ballot? And I still haven't done my Hart Trophy ballot. I know there's room for one person outside of the 4 forwards, McKinnon, McDavid, Kucherov, and Matthews. But if you're considering Quinn Hughes for the Hart Trophy, is anybody considering Cale Makar for the Hart Trophy?
Nope.
I saw BX's rant about Hughes as a Hart Trophy guy and agreed with many of the points he made. I haven't heard any of that talk about Cale Makar.
No.
So does it in fact then not follow that Quinn Hughes should be the Norris Trophy winner? I think so. Right?
The models around the league show that Cale Makar has leaned on McKinnon a ton this season. That when Makar is on the ice and McKinnon is nowhere to be found, that it's not been good news for the Colorado Avalanche. Speaking of Dom's model, he put out his Hart.
Oh, did he?
Prognostications, and Quinn Hughes is 5th.
R.I.P. his mention. Oh, okay.
Quinn Hughes went from like 5th tier, I think, in his preseason model to 5th in the Hart by the end of the season. So
Dom's pandering now. He also put out a photo of him wearing a Quinn Hughes.
Oh, that was a reaction to that original model, though. Yeah,
with the numbers 3B instead of 43.
What does Corrado say?
No, it was in a mirror.
Canucks Twitter undefeated. So yeah, I think he's going to win the Norris, but I am still a little nervous for him. Abbotsford Canucks. They're coming down the stretch as well. In fact, they have 2 games left. Friday, Saturday, home here against Calgary. They're 2 points up on Colorado for 4th place in the Pacific Division of the American Hockey League. And they have the youngest team in the AHL. Average age 23.75. They do have some veterans, and that is often key to winning in the Calder Cup playoffs. Christian Wolanin. We never did see Christian Wolanin here this year, huh?
No.
A lot of people had him penciled in as being irregular.
Really bad injury.
For the Vancouver Canucks this season because of how well he showed last year in the late stages. But injuries is part of the equation, but also he didn't get a call-up at any point this season. Played just the 40 games. Anyways, Wolanin, John Stevens, Sheldon Dries, we know Sheldon, and Victorious Matt Irwin are the 30 and above crowd there. And in fact, I saw in the Canucks Insider, Matt Irwin was joking at 35 years of age that he was literally twice as old as Sawyer Mineo, who just got signed in 18 to almost 36.
An appropriate use of the word literally there. Yes.
Yes.
Mathematically. Double the age.
Well, some may quibble with a few months there.
Yes.
But that's one of my pet peeves, Price.
Yes,
when people use literally in exactly opposite of its dictionary definition.
It'll be interesting to see, though, of course, how long the Abbey Canucks playoff run goes, and then Black Aces, if the Canucks can get to the second round, could have some extra bodies rattling around. You'd think Will Lannon is an obvious choice for defense, but who else might they choose? We'll find out. Cross those bridges when we get to them.
All right. Grady, you want me to throw the welcome mat here? Or are we going to do tell them about the T-shirts?
Let's get into it.
Let's get into it.
Let's get into it. I don't know if it was malicious. Probably not. But I do know it was another WTF moment. My question to ownership would be, was it worth it? And the architect, and I use that term loosely, given there wasn't much architecture, more finger painting with this team. It's like the running of the Bulls in Pamplona. You know someone is going to get hurt.
That's what you all need to understand here, right now.
So it's been an amazing season for the Canucks. As we mentioned, an opportunity to be the second best ever if they win out and tie the 2012 team. Here's a handful of the great stories that have taken place within this season, in no particular order, but feel free to chime the both of you. Rick Tocchet Hockey. They have subscribed to the non-negotiables. They play the more structured style. They win games with defense and offense, and he's going to win the Jack Adams. Now, can I ask you, do we see the value in hiring Tocchet when they hired Tocchet last year?
You're going to try and dunk on that right now?
No. And I don't keep receipts often, but I remember you, and to a lesser degree, Jeff, wondering what could be gained by Rick Tocchet in the final couple of months of last season. And I think we saw it. They were ready to go out of the chute this year. They knew the style, they knew the structure, they knew the expectations. They understood everything about this coach's plan, and they put it into practice off the hop. And they desperately needed that good start because they had buried themselves in previous seasons. So I didn't rank these. This isn't a ranking. But for me, Tocchet, the biggest catalyst to this turnaround. And speaking of awards, trophy quests. We just talked about it. They tracked a number of these big NHL awards. We'll be disappointed now if Hughes doesn't win the Norris. Demko's going to get some Vezina votes. I suspect Hughes will get some Hart votes. I have Elias Pettersson on my Lady Bing ballot. I think he's going to get some votes there. I haven't done my Selke ballot yet, but is there a chance he gets any kind of Selke love there?
Down
ballot?
Yeah.
Okay. Trade request reversals. Think back to this time last year. Couldn't give Besser away. Couldn't give Garland away. Contracts, too onerous. Too expensive. No takers. Both guys wanted out. Garland spends the opening day of the season parsing reports about his trade request. Do you remember that? Didn't say he requested a trade, but didn't deny. It was one of those non-denial denials. And then look what happened from that point forward. They played great. Besser gets the 4 goals on opening night. He blows right through the aim of 30 goals. J-Pat, and the question, is this the year of 30 goals? Brock's like, how about 40 goals? And then there's Garland. They are chanting his name at Rogers Arena. This time last year, Blake, he's on the 14 goals before the hat trick at the end of the year? And everybody's sitting there going, one of, if not the worst trade in Vancouver Canucks history. This year, he forms 1/3 of what was amongst the best NHL third lines with Bluger and Joshua. Philip Hronek in this defense. I don't know how many shows we spent angsty about how long it was going to take to fix the Vancouver Canucks defense. It was Quinn Hughes and then 5 gaping holes, right? You remember this before the Philip Hronek trade? They're years away from playoff contention, or years away from Stanley Cup contention, and probably years away from the playoffs because of what a gong show that defense is. Philip Hronek, just what the doctor ordered. A top pair right side defenseman to play with Hughes. But the free agents, Susie and Cole, worked out. When they realize we're still not done there, they make the trade for Zadorov. Improved play from Tyler Myers. So much so that we're talking about re-signing him for next year. If you had said at this time last year, I think the Canucks should re-sign Tyler Myers on a hometown discount, ratioed. Now, there will still be naysayers on that, but I think that's what we're inching towards.
At the right price, it'll be pretty slim, the naysayers.
Even Noah Juleson, he turns into an NHL player. You feel fine about Noah Juleson in a game this year. They go 7 deep on defense. That's pretty damn good. In fact, that's like wizardry on the part of Alvin and Rutherford. Frankly, some really good work with Joshua in the bottom 6 too. I mean, full credit for Dakota Joshua taking another step forward in his career this year. And he was the one guy who missed some time with injury, but 17 goals, again, with Bluger and Garland, part of that great third line. Nils Höglander started in the bottom 6, graduated in the top 6. They got some decent contributions from Sam Lafferty, even Phil DiGiuseppe early in the season when he was doing all that spade work for Besser and Miller. So the bottom 6, secondary scoring, which was like total outage stuff for a number of years for the Vancouver Canucks, stepped up. I know we've worried a little bit more about them since the All-Star break, and rightfully so. But in totality, on the whole, the secondary scoring, and just look at some of the goal totals. Like even Mikheyev, who's gone more than half a season, right? You look at some of the goal totals with the bottom 6 guys, still pretty good. Mikheyev, 11 goals on a 50-game drought. Suter, 14 goals. Lafferty, 13 goals. These are the sorts of numbers that playoff teams have. These are the sorts of numbers that good teams have. And then the good health. We talked about this yesterday. Their top 6 leading scorers have all played 80 games, and their 7th leading scorer, Nils Höglander, has played 78. The 2 he missed were healthy scratches earlier in the year. Whether you were heading to Rogers Arena, having paid your ticket to watch these guys live, or investing your time on the couch in front of the television, night in, night out, you knew you were seeing Quinn Hughes, JT Miller, Elias Pettersson, Brock Besser, Connor Garland, Philip Hronek, and since the last healthy scratch, Nils Höglander. One more week to get through here. Let's hope Canucks luck doesn't strike. That's Welcome At for today. We invite your feedback channels. There's other great stories you want to throw into the mix here, by all means. Email live@sekeresandprice.com. Can text 778-402-9680 at Sekeres and Price, at Matt Sekeres on Twitter. And the Welcome At, a presentation of Northlands Golf Course. You can book 6 to 90-day reservations, jump the queue, lock in your dates for a $10 per player booking fee, limited daily availability. Check it all out. Go to golfnorthlands.com and then finish your round with a cold beverage and a bite on that incredible patio overlooking the golf course. In fact, we may do that tomorrow.
I won't quibble with much there. And this is not to diminish in any way the job that Rick Tocchet has done this season.
Mm-hmm.
I would say the start to this season, though, the biggest difference from the start to this season and the end of last season was the performance of the role players.
Yeah.
Like JT Miller's start didn't differ from previous seasons. Elias Pettersson's start didn't differ from previous paces. You know, these guys were 100-point guys and they were on 100-point paces. Brock Besser's maybe the one exception to that. But the big reason why the Vancouver Canucks got a great start, contributions from Ilya Mikheyev, Teddy Bluger, Pius Suter, Sam Lafferty, Nils Höglander, and Philip Hronek, none of whom played under Rick Tocchet last year. So to me, again...
Well, but it's not just the points, it's the defensive side too.
But that didn't come until the second half of the season. This team has not been a defensive juggernaut until the second half of the season.
Well, juggernaut, sure, but did well enough defensively in the early going to win those games.
And the revamping of the defense as a whole.
Right.
Bringing in Cole, Susie,
Again,
acquiring Zadorov.
Yeah, perfect example.
No.
Did not play for Rick Tocchet
And
last
Blake
year.
wants to continuously litigate this because he
You
cannot
brought it up.
admit he is
You
wrong.
brought it up. You brought it
We
up.
said at the time, look, you may in fact hurt your lottery odds by bringing in a new coach and getting the new coach bump. But the benefit is that he's not starting fresh. He's not starting anew in a training camp next season. This is their training camp. And that's going to benefit a lot of players in terms of getting used to a new style, getting used to a head coach who is going to have some non-negotiables, things you absolutely have to do. And let's face it, it was quite an overhaul in style from what Bruce Boudreau employed. So
It's a non-zero effect. I'm just saying I don't think it can be overplayed either.
Non-zero. It is, for my money, far, far beyond non-zero. But hey, I understand what you're saying. I just disagree. I'm
Okay.
sit there in your wrongness and be wrong.
Coming up next, The Price is Right on why.
Hey, I'd welcome it. We should do that segment, right?
The price is wrong.
Playoffs are near, and this year we have an army. Nation Gear ready to gear you up for Vancouver's playoff run. You can rep your team as they battle for the cup. Shop the exclusive We Have an Army playoff tee and more at nationgear.ca. Okay, let's get into today's menu, and it's brought to you by Ben Moss Jewelers. Ben Moss Jewelers, proudly Canadian owned, operated, history dating back more than 100 years. 5 locations in BC, Willowbrook Mall in Langley, Coquitlam Center. Committed to customer satisfaction. You can check out the large selection of Canadian mine diamonds, lab-grown diamond, and these diamonds are available with payment plan to suit your needs. For more information, check out benmoss.com. Ben Moss, for the love of jewelry. Kevin Woodley, Kevin in Goal, is going to join us on all things goaltending with the Canucks. Demko, DeSmith, Seeloffs, even Tolopilo gets a shout here. We talk about the Vezina Trophy. And Irfaan Gaffar on playoff traditions, playoff start dates, their form going in, and some of these individual Canucks in closing strongly in the regular season. But Kevin Woodley is coming up next.
In a season like this, you never want to miss a single second of what's happening on the ice, and you want to be around your fellow fans, right? Well, Greta Bar YVR at 50 West Cordova, the perfect spot to do so. Hey, if you've got tickets, a great place to pre and post. They've got drink specials every single day. And if you don't have tickets, well, stick around and soak up the atmosphere with all your fellow fans, play all the great video games and air hockey, great air hockey setup as well at Greta Bar YVR. We'll see you there, 50 West Cordova.
Our next guest brought to you by the Arnold Palmer Design Whistler Golf Club. Counting down to opening day on May 10th. Club reminds organizers of groups of 12 or more, get in touch, get on those summer tee times. The prime times are filling up fast, and just for reaching out, you, the organizer, to hold that tee time, you get to play for free. Whistler Golf Club. Yes, we'll take care of the rest. Tell us about your group. whistlergolf.com/groups. The Bears are back. You can follow all the spring preparations at Whistler Golf.
Podcasters are wondering what I was referencing.
There's
Bears on the
B-roll
YouTube.
in the YouTube show, and the
Reason
the
enough.
last time we were there, we saw a bear just amble across the 18th fairway.
Didn't replace his bike.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Joining us now from In Goal Media, the goalie guru of them all, Mr. Kevin Woodley, back here with Sekeres Price. Kevin, how we doing?
I'm good, but I said the B-roll could not include footage of me playing goal because the gig would be up and those bears rolling around on the green kind of resemble the way I.
Is that your style? Yeah,
So,
that's it.
but you'll see.
I believe they call that the reverse XH. It's just you starfished on the
You've heard of Dominic Hasek's The Barrel Roll. Well, that was
Hey, honestly, not to get off track there, I was thinking the other day, Hasek came across my timeline. I was like, damn, did he play an entertaining goal?
He did.
If more of them could play Dominic Hasek's style.
Who's the craziest goalie that's like getting regular action in the NHL right now?
Right.
Oh, that's a good one. Flower still likes to throw.
Yeah.
And I think it's limited to a move or two. Like it's not all over the place all the time, a la Dom.
Yeah.
But Pyotr Kochetkov, he is not shy to throw out a very aggressive 2-pad stack poke check. I think he got called for tripping the other night on a breakaway of all things. Dom was best line I ever heard about Dom, and I actually got a chance to sit down and talk to him about like the barrel roll, and there was a very specific mechanics to it. Shove the blocker out to force the guy wide, and now that I know he's forced out wide, he can't elevate the puck because he's had to extend his hands. So then I roll over on my back and I lay my arms flat. That's my new legs in my butterfly, and my torso comes up and my pads go straight. Basically, it's a reverse butterfly. Like there was thought that went into it.
Upside down, yeah.
Yeah, what did they say? Brain like a computer and body like a slinky. It was
mad
amazing.
scientist. And the other thing is, he was entertaining to watch. He was entertaining to speak to as well. Yes. Dominic Hasek, a great conversation and a humorous one more often than not. Okay, let's get to the Vancouver Canucks. This 5-week injury for Thatcher Demco. What's your understanding of how the rest and rehabilitation went in the process over these last 5 weeks, and the whole notion that they targeted this Calgary game for his return?
Well, I mean, targeted, and that was the high side, sort of the quick return side. Like, I think this is an injury that for a lot of people, or if you had a lot of time, you might take longer. But Thatcher was determined to get back, and please don't mistake that for saying he rushed back. Like, he did the work. And I think what people don't understand is Thatcher's done the work since the last time he got hurt, which was related. I mean, the only reason he got hurt last year is he had a compensatory pattern in his movement from the knee surgery the year before. So that it's almost like separate injuries and always injury prone. Like, it's actually just one injury that was never addressed properly in terms of the recovery and rehab. And sort of, we all know where things were with this team. Frankly, the medical staff being run by a golf chiropractor last year, right? Like, things are better now. And he's done the work. He's changed how he trains in the years since then. And so his body was ready to sort of dig into this. You heard talk it yesterday, twice a day with the rehab he was in. Credit to the medical team for the work they did, the hours they put in. I watched him on the ice, guys. Like, I know there's people that are like, oh, what if he gets hurt again in the last couple of games? Like, if he does, it's going to be because something freak happens out there, not because it's a reoccurring injury. He is flying out there. He's being put into some of the most stressful positions you can as a goaltender, and he's moving into them with pace and power and precision. I am not worried about the sort of physical or technical elements of Thatcher Demko's game at this point.
Is 2 games enough to be playoff racer sharp, Kev?
I mean, is it ideal? Maybe not, but it's funny because outside of the scrum, we had a conversation after his first practice last week, and I had kind of put it on radio, like, your upside is, think of it as the preseason. Starting NHL goalies play 2, maybe some guys play 2.5 games in the preseason. Haven't been on the ice all summer. They work through camp to get their technique down, and then they play 2 games, then boom, they're off and running. Thatcher Demko was the best goalie in the world for the first 6 weeks of the regular season. By such a wide margin, he pretty much lapped the field. That's where the Vezina Trophy case was built. He was the best. So that was what I saw as the upside, right? Hey, like, this guy knows how to come off of a time away, and this wasn't lengthy. A month to 5 weeks isn't a huge gap. And so I put it to him. I'm like, hey, was I oversimplifying that when I said that? He's like, what are you talking about? I said, well, because some people are worried that 2 games might not be enough. And he genuinely seemed surprised that was a concern. So I don't think he thinks it's a concern. Obviously, I'm not comparing game 1 of the regular season to the first game of the playoffs and the intensity that comes with it. But that first game this year against the Edmonton Oilers, as we remember, all the narratives going into it about having to face Edmonton back-to-back to start, like, those were pretty intense games too. So a little bit at ease because of that. And if you want another example, an extreme example, best goalie for the last, 6 weeks in the NHL has been Frederik Andersen, and he took pretty much the whole season coming off of the blood clots. He's rested, he's fresh, he's playing great. I think the hopes and the upside is that Thatcher Demko comes back the same way.
Well, and the funny thing is, we'll get definitive word on this in the next 36 hours, but if they face the Preds, he will have had 2 starts with UC Saros having none over the probably 7 to 8 days between games for the Predators. So if it is Canucks Predators, the Canucks will have the more sharp in mode sort of goaltender over the Preds.
Yeah, and honestly, I think, he kind of reiterated this to me, away from the scrum too, like 4 to 5 weeks versus, 3 or 4 months might be a different story in terms of getting back up to game speed. We saw how he came back last year and how good he was. And don't forget, that was him coming back to an entirely different system because they'd switched coaches, right? Like everything and everybody is more comfortable with the way they execute within this system. He trusts his reads more. They've become more innate now within this system and with this group than they were coming back last year. I just think that doesn't mean, none of this means it's a guaranteed success or it's going to be easy. I don't want to pretend that. But I just don't think a lot of the consternation I hear around his return matches how he and the group feels about the way they expect this to go.
Can he still win the Vezina?
No, I mean, that's Hellebuck's now. The tough part for Thatcher, not that that's not the trophy he cares about, all the goalies, and Hellebuck will tell you the same thing. But I thought the week preceding the injury was sort of the best we'd seen him since the first 6 weeks of the season. Like he really looked like he was dialed in on his game. I think of the LA game and some of the 2-on-1 saves he made in that one. Just so that's he was ahead of Hellebuck in goals saved above expected at that point. And I think he would have had a chance to really build a margin where absolutely that case would have been a strong one.
He didn't lose his runner-up position though, did he? He'll be first runner-up.
It's interesting because GM's just, and I haven't even looked, it's gotten to the point now, guys, where I look at the fancy stats from ClearSight Analytics and barely touch the raw numbers. GMs look at save percentage and wins.
Yeah.
I think he's still, like 7th in the league in wins despite missing a month, or top 5. So he's got a chance. Based on the fancy numbers, the two guys that are sort of between him and Hellebuck now are Jacob Markstrom, but the way things have fallen off a cliff for the past month, I don't see him getting a finalist nod from GMs. The other one that I think deserves it is Binnington. So it's almost like a bit of a case of attrition. There'll be people that make a case for Saros, and he should have been a finalist last year. I really don't know how it shakes out because of the month he's missed. He certainly would have been without it. Honestly, you could put him. You could put. I think Binnington deserves to be there. At the end of the day, they're all vying for second or third because Hellebuck's just sort of put an exclamation point on this season.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, I reached out to Kevin last week when filling out my NHL All-Star team ballot. So Vezina finalist, All-Star team, first, second, well, not first, but second or third team, I think, still very much available. Casey DeSmith. And if things go well, Kevin, that might be the last we see Casey DeSmith in the Canucks goal, right? Maybe he gets tossed into a postseason. Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying. Into a postseason game that's out of hand one way or the other. But that might be the last in terms of meaningful minutes we see from Casey DeSmith this year. What did you make of his season? And is there a case to bring him back? Do you think they will bring him back? Try to bring him back?
Well, I think ultimately that's going to be decided based on what it costs, right? Like at the end of the day, he's a good fit here. And I think we saw in the post game on Saturday, the relationship that's been built between Thatcher and Casey come out. Thatcher comes out to sort of greet him and give him that big hug after a big emotional win in a really tough spot for him, right? So, you absolutely can make a case to bring Casey DeSmith back. I just don't know, given the progression of Seelovs and where he's at, in his career and what he costs relative to Casey DeSmith, whether it's going to fit under the cap. Like to me, that really becomes almost as much a cap decision and where do we spend our money? Because there's not a lot of high end on the open market this summer, but there's a lot of quality sort of 1B guys. And we've seen in the past where that can create a bidding war. Look at Laurent Brossoit. He's on a 1-year deal in Winnipeg. His adjusted numbers are actually slightly better on a per shot basis than Connor Hellebuck. He's had an exceptional year again in Winnipeg. The last time he did that, I think Vegas gave him 2 or 3 years at 2.5, 2.575. Like if the market gets driven up and Casey's all of a sudden looking at $2 million somewhere else, I know the goalie coach in LA is someone he worked with in Pittsburgh and has had a long-standing relationship with. I could see him basically getting priced out of where they are in terms of what they want to spend on their backup. Everything else, though, in terms of what he's given them, despite a few ups and downs when he had to take the reins as the number one for those 7 straight starts, absolutely. Why wouldn't you bring him back? He doesn't give up bad goals. Up until that run, one of the fewest sort of low percentage goalies in the entire National Hockey League. You'd only given up 2 to that point. And that's what you want out of your backup, a steadiness, the work ethic. The guys battle hard for him because he works hard for them in practice. All the stuff that Tocchet said during the year, not lip service. Like it's legit. It's true. I've seen it go the other way. And Casey understands that role. And, a lot of guys struggle in it. And he really does a nice job with it.
I would bet Laurent Brossoit gives you a hometown discount too, if he was an option for the Vancouver Canucks, or they go super cheap with Seeloffs. Is the other option. Is that bad developmentally though? Should Seeloffs be a true number one, or at least a 45 game number one down in Abbotsford next season rather than the backup?
If it is Seeloffs based on finances and they believe he's ready, and I thought he showed signs both ways. Like you make the argument both. Like you could say like if you have time, use it. I can't remember which Hall of Fame GM always used to preach that, but he's got another year where he doesn't require waivers. Now you could use that by just saying, hey, we're going to re-sign Casey or get another guy who's on an NHL deal, and you're going to play a ton of minutes down there, and you'll come up in injuries and we'll play you. Or you need 3. Like we've seen that around the league. Arguably, you need 4 that can come in and play if you need it, but you need at least 3. So if you don't sign a guy in the 2 spot and you trust Arturs in that role, you have to be able to find a guy to go into the 3 spot who you trust to come up in the NHL. Maybe a project guy a little bit, but you need somebody that you think can play in the National Hockey League. If you have that guy and Arturs is your backup, you can still, and credit to the ownership group for I've done this lots of times, bringing the ownership, the farm team to Abbotsford matters in this regard. Ian Clark did this with Jonas Korpisalo. The Predators did it with UC Saros. You're with the team all week. You're an NHL goalie all week. But if you don't play, and we get to the weekend and we know Thatcher's going, and you're just going to be sitting on the bench on a Saturday and Abbotsford's down the road with 2, you go down to Abbotsford and you play 2. And the other guy, he comes up and sits on the bench on Saturday night. It's a way to sort of keep guys in the NHL, working with NHL shooters. There's value there, working with the NHL goalie coach and still getting some games played. I wouldn't say it's a common practice, but there are some teams that have used this right around this time of Seeloff's development path with some pretty prominent goalies that were on their way to futures as number ones. They used that method.
Hey, some people midway through the year, we're talking about how Tolopilo had leapfrogged Seeloffs. Kevin, how close is Tolopilo? Like, is that a real possibility?
He took him out. Yeah, I mean, he took a big stride this year as the year went on, Matt. I got to watch a few games down in Abbotsford. It's been a little tricky that's the downside of them being in town at the same time, is I don't get down there as much as I'd like, but I have watched him play a few games live. My opinion, he's probably not ready for the National Hockey League. There's still, but what he did, that doesn't discount like first year pro in North America. A guy who wasn't on anybody's radar just a couple of years ago, had a number of teams bid on his services last year, chose the Canucks in part because of their goaltending coach structure and who they have in place at both levels, and took a huge, to push Seeloffs and like you said, basically surpass him at a point this year in the American Hockey League. As in your first year in North America, guys, when they signed Sawchenko, I thought he would be the one in the American League and that they would send Tolopilo down to the ECHL to get games. So for him to earn them in the American League as a first-year North American pro is a huge positive sign. Does it mean he's ready for the NHL? From what I've seen, not necessarily. There's still work to be done.
Marvelous stuff, Kevin. You're the best. We always learn on goaltending when you join the show. Appreciate this, my friend. Enjoy the playoffs, huh?
Pleasure is all. Guys, I covered Seattle last year for the NHL.com. Went down. I forgot how much I'd missed it till I was walking on the sled in the sunshine. I cannot wait for this. It's been so long. I want to see the energy in the city, the sun out as we head to the rink. I can't wait for it. Are you a Tal Power guy? Do you want to see Tal Power? I'm assuming they're doing it right because I got to submit something to NHL.com about the things that, I mean, Roger Nielsen's, there's a statue of him waving a towel outside. So I'm assuming we'll have to be going back to it, right?
Right. We'll find out.
Yeah. Marvelous stuff. Thanks, Kev.
Thanks, guys.
Hey, everybody, if you're enjoying what you're seeing here, then follow along with Sekeres Price on YouTube. I promise more content coming.
The kids call it subscribe on YouTube.
Well, how about liking it?
Do that as well. Smash it right now.
Northlands Golf Course. Download the free app and book tee times with a touch of your thumb. And while you're on course, open the app for hole-by-hole GPS and track your score. 6 to 90-day reservations. Jump the queue. Lock in your date for $10 per player booking fee. Limited daily availability. Check it all out. GolfNorthlands.com.
Hey, you. No, not you. You. Are you an owner-operator? You have a fleet of trucks or cars? Well, CalPro Plus might be the dedicated tire program just for you.
Free program includes exclusive deals and savings, price match guarantee, flexible financing, and preferred pricing on everything you drive.
Also, you get a dedicated member support line. That means that you can get questions answered. Also, they'll source and recommend the right tire for you, your application, and your budget.
Cal Tire's network of 260 plus stores are here to help so you can focus on the road ahead. Sign up for free at calproplus.com. Irfaan Gaffar, co-host Rinkwide Vancouver, alongside Jeff Patterson. And you ready to do this playoffs thing, bro?
Oh, I'm pumped. Look, I think the first home playoff game since 2015, I think we can cross out the bubble and let's get going. I know you guys are going to be doing some stuff as well. Pumped to have you guys on, but yeah, let's do it. I'm excited.
I had to give my 13 or 14 now year old daughter and my nephew a lesson in playoffs because they really, as conscious human beings, haven't experienced the playoffs. They were 4 for the last.
Didn't resonate with them at 5.
No. So I was like, you don't understand. Like, if they can just make it into the second round, even like games 5, 6, and 7 are like mid-May. The sun is out. There's parties, barbecue. Like, it's a lot of fun. And they were like, wow, like they couldn't believe what that sounded like. So let's hope it goes kind of deep and we get that springtime vibe,
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I've always said the playoffs in any city are the best, but playoffs here in that mid-May you mentioned, and bars, restaurants, talk podcasts, everything that we do for a living, it just makes everything better. So yeah, it should be a really exciting time here.
Makes everything better except for your liver.
It's true.
That's a rest up. You're gonna rest up, save up.
Morning tea times will be available.
Exactly.
Everybody needs to sleep in.
Exactly. Are you feeling the buzz yet?
Yeah, I think so. I think people are just excited. Obviously, you see with people going out and putting out ticket prices and all of that, and now the Canucks are starting to ramp up their social media presence and kind of being felt. And the car flags are on the cars, and different people in different communities are going to be doing all types of things. But it's an exciting time. I think that this week helps a little bit. I think if the Canucks can manage to get some momentum here and win these final 2 games as you head into the weekend and into the playoffs, I think that's when we'll really start to see things kind of ramp up.
Canuck fans used to travel when there was the expectation of the Cup in the Sedin era. And, even in 14-15, it was Calgary, so that was available to people. If it's the Predators, how many Canuck fans are going to make that trip? I think in LA, people probably would have tried to make the trip too. But do you think people will travel this year?
I think LA, Vegas, you can get. Nashville's tough, right? There's what is it? 1 direct flight, 1 day a week or something like that. So that one's tough to get to. I mean, the diehards, probably someone might go for a game or two. Depending on if you do the math, what it costs to get there and hotel and tickets versus ticket and a night out here or whatever it is. But I expect some people to travel.
Hey, we saw a good number of Canucks fans in Nashville in 2011.
Yeah, but there was expectation.
Fair enough.
Like
a lot of Canucks fans in Edmonton on Saturday as well, although I imagine many of them have relocated to Alberta. All right, our poll question. Do you want to see towel power, Irf?
Yeah, I do. I think it's when you think of Canuck playoffs, going back to all the way. I mean, for me, 94 is probably my earliest memory of things like that, just going to the rink and seeing it and having lived it. It's cool. It's great. Why not? Towels on seats. Plus, it's a souvenir for fans. I don't know if it's going to get to the whiteout experience that is the Winnipeg Jets, nor should it. But yeah, definitely towel power it up.
Do you have a playoff preferred opponent? Have we talked to you about that yet? It's 80% Preds according to Blake's model. What do you think?
So look, I think it's interesting if you look at it because the Preds is the sexy pick just because of, the Vegas are the defending Stanley Cup champions and the way that the LA Kings play. And you've seen the way that the Canucks match up against those two teams. I don't know. Like the Preds they play hard. They play a big game. They play hard and their goalie can get hot, right? Whereas Vegas, we haven't really seen much from Adin Hill. And I don't know if I trust Cam Talbot. I trust the game they play in front of them. I'm not entirely sure I trust, him as a goaltender. So Saros, yeah, I definitely trust him. But if you're the Vancouver Canucks, obviously they'll never admit it on who they want to play. I think if you're a fan, Nashville's probably the matchup. But the way kind of Aiden Hill's looking a little shaky, I don't mind Vegas. Like, if you want to be the best and you think you're that good, go and beat the best. And Vegas is a good matchup for that.
And they're just not playing well. Like, I know that it makes a lot of sense. Why would we want to face the defending Stanley Cup champions in the first round? That doesn't make any sense. I don't think normally anybody would volunteer that, but they're still super injured. They're not playing well. I don't know. They may not be as big of a monster as people think they are.
No, I agree. And look, I understand they're getting Mark Stone back, but how healthy and how effective is he going to be? You're obviously going to get that boost. Their building is a difficult building to play in, but if you're up 2-0 going into that building, you know, it's a whole different ballgame there. All the pressure's on the home team at that point. And then I know, Matt, that we've talked about it with you in the past year, this year, that maybe not a lot of locals are sold on this Vegas Golden Knights team this season.
You look at what tickets are going for on the secondary market in Vegas, and it is clear that the honeymoon is over a little bit, that locals don't necessarily anticipate another Stanley Cup run there, that they have had enormous fun. And I think Canuck Nation could absolutely take over that building if, in fact, it is the Vegas Golden Knights, particularly if it's 2 buzz heading to Sin City.
Well, 100%. I think if it's 2-0 heading in, right, you can go book that flight halfway through the second period. The next one's probably going to leave that morning. You know when the games are going to be, so you can probably find a pretty cheap deal on a hotel, and you're just paying for the ticket prices of the game. But yeah, I mean, LA's a little bit more different, and then maybe the stylistic approach to the hockey game. If you want to watch an exciting brand of hockey, traveling to watch the LA Kings and Canucks might not be in your best interest. But yeah, I mean, I'm in for the Vegas-Vancouver matchup. I think that Nashville could be an interesting one. That one might be a little bit more on who's going to make the first mistake, whereas Vegas, both teams will go at each other. And in LA, we obviously know that the way that they play.
How do you feel? They've got a couple of wins here against playoff teams in the last week in Edmonton and Vegas. How do you feel about their form heading in, Irf?
Well, I think it can only go up from here, especially with your goaltender making the start here today against the Calgary Flames, right? You get your best player, basically one of your best players back, and, he's going to play the next 2 games. The interesting one is if they win today, what's the lineup going to look like on Wednesday, right? Or sorry, on Thursday against the Winnipeg Jets. Thatcher Demko is going to go. Got to get him into both games, but there can conceivably be a scenario where a lot of their big dogs get some rest. So I like the way they're playing. I like the way that Elias Lindholm has come back into the lineup and kind of inserted himself right away in being that guy depended on in their 2-way game. He's taking the big faceoffs. He's killing penalties. That line hasn't looked bad. Still want to see a little bit more from Elias Pettersson, but, you hope he can, kick it into that extra gear and get that boost of momentum as we head into the playoffs. But the way that Quinn Hughes has played, the way that JT Miller's played all season long, things are kind of trending in the right direction now.
Quinn Hughes, I know you talked to a lot of people around the league, a lot of voters on the Norris Trophy. How do you feel about his Norris Trophy candidacy here going into the final 2?
I've said this all year long. There are going to be voters in the National Hockey League that don't have Quinn Hughes as their top 3. That's just the reality we're going to live in. ESPN did something last year in the middle of the season, and it was a poll with executives, players, and someone else. And Quinn Hughes wasn't even in the top 10. So there are people that, whether it's obviously living in the East and not watching many of these games, and you see the stats and you say, okay, yeah, Quinn Hughes is doing things, but Cale Makar this, Cale Makar that, Adam Fox this, Adam Fox that, and there are other very good defensemen. I think that Quinn Hughes should be the Norris Trophy winner. I think there's a lot of people that agree. I think you would both agree as well, but I can see the case being made for Cale Makar. The problem is, if you look at it, the Canucks without Quinn Hughes are a significantly worse team than Colorado without Cale Makar. And I think that that's one of the things you have to go and look at. Like, Nathan McKinnon can carry that team. Quinn Hughes is this Vancouver Canucks team for the most part.
Don't underestimate Kevin BX's comments on Hockey in Canada, saying that Hughes should be the Hart Trophy winner too, or get consideration at least for the Hart. Like, he's not going to, but that sort of publicity, that sort of stage, that helps.
Yeah. I think, gosh, leave him off the top 3 in the ballot. Like,
I think there will. I think
You're
you'll
not
see
thinking-
people. I think you will. I think you'll see ballots that will have him off the top 3.
Blake's been musing about this week, but if they get everything wrapped up tonight, or even if they just get the Pacific wrapped up, would you sit him? Would you not take him to Winnipeg and just give him the extra rest?
Yeah, I mean, I think you would. I think you're going to have to talk to him as well. But if it's a close game and they end up kind of pulling it off and they don't play a good hockey game, it's one of those ugly ones, I think he'll want to go. I think that they want to end on a good note, and it's going to be one of those things where if you beat the Calgary Flames in convincing fashion and you lock up the division tonight and things are good, then it's okay. But if you kind of maybe manage your way through it and it's an okay game, you might want to go and play. Like, if he doesn't play today, if he doesn't play after today and some of these guys get rest, your next actual game action isn't until Tuesday, game 1, right? Potentially. So that's a lot of rest for some of these guys, which is rest is good, but you might want to just feel that a little bit before.
The other problem here, guys, is that that letter on his chest.
Mm-hmm.
I think he.
Well, 82. There's a lot of sort of symbols.
Yeah,
him.
but
I think he just feels like as the captain, he's got to be there every
Right.
night,
I think you do feel that as well, but also as the captain of this team, and you're going to want to be healthy for game 1 of the playoffs. I think that is more important. If you've locked up the division, you're having a hell of a season. You've done everything you possibly can, except play 82 games to, put yourself in for the Norris Trophy consideration. Like, get that rest, load management.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think everybody's going to be well rested. I mean, there seems to be this murmuring that it's a Monday or a Tuesday start for the Canucks, which, providing they can get through this week, guys, they get the best of all the worlds. There's no talk of rust for them because they will have played right up until the last second. I mean, they're the second last game on the calendar of the National Hockey League. And yet they've had the requisite amount of rest before their game 1. I think, the schedule in that regard is shaping up perfectly for them.
Yeah, I remember talking about how game 1 of the playoffs was being moved to Saturday the 20th. And Matt, and I think it was you and I being like, there's no chance the Canucks are going to play on that Saturday after playing Thursday in Winnipeg. So they're going to get the rest. They're going to play on Tuesday. I believe it is Tuesday, Thursday, and then we'll see kind of what happens there in Vancouver. But yeah, I mean, rest is going to be good, I think. But if you are players on that team, maybe getting into that last game is good, but the rest is needed. Like, what if, something bad, like you block a shot by accident, right? You just don't want to put yourself into those situations.
A lot of flamingos that night.
Do you, if in fact it does begin Tuesday, do you think that's an advantage for the Nashville Predators, who are already done and could feasibly on a plane being here, getting time adjusted by Wednesday or Thursday?
That's a long time to not be playing and sitting around and waiting. I mean, they're scoreboard watching just like we are over the next little week here to figure out where they're going. Like I said, rest is good. And like I've also said, rest sometimes is not a good thing. So would you want to have played at least 2-3 days before? Probably, if you're the Nashville Predators. But yeah, I mean, having your goaltender not being on the ice for a while, having, guys who have been ailing with injuries be able to get back and get healthy. But again, like getting into that game action, there's nothing like playing a game, and especially in the playoffs.
Next trophy question. Demko, you think he's still going to be a finalist for the Vezina?
I think he'll be a finalist. It's got to be Hellebucks, right? I mean, just the season that he's had, and obviously the longevity of what he's been able to go through this season with that team. I think he'll be a finalist, but I'm not entirely sure that he gets that many votes. To be completely honest, I just think missing a month is way too much. But again, like the Norris, like this team was able to kind of figure it out with Demko a little bit because they were so good in front, which goes back to my argument about Quinn Hughes. Without Quinn Hughes, this team is literally nowhere, right? Without Thatcher Demko, they were able to manage and put together some pretty good wins. But yeah, I think he'll be a finalist. I just don't think he's going to win it.
After all he's done, let him wear the tux and arrive at the ceremony. My goodness, that's a hell of a
Vegas,
thing.
baby.
But for first of all, do they have an award show this year?
Is that been
I
finalized?
believe they talked about. I'm not sure there's details of an award show finalized. I thought I saw that headline earlier earlier this season
It's
that
getting a little late in the day.
yeah, well, I think they realized, March 15th, plans have not yet been formalized for the NHL's awards show. And look, for a lot of people, a lot of people say, good riddance.
Yeah.
It was not a particularly good show. Very stiff.
Yeah.
And some guys don't even, some guys would just rather not, have to get on a plane and go and sit there and pose to be a runner-up.
Fake laugh.
Yeah,
for
exactly.
a few hours.
Fake clap.
Yeah.
You saw Gosling with Oppenheimer. He wasn't happy for him.
If I'm the league, here's what I do. This is your last quote unquote in-person draft in Vegas. You're doing it big. You're doing the Sphere. So you got to figure out a way to figure out the award show in that. Plus, guys are going to want a free trip to Vegas.
Yeah, Vegas is the one place that they would be okay with going. Does Tocchet have the Jack Adams wrapped up?
I think it's his to lose. I don't even think anyone comes close, right? If you look at the season, we've debated this. There are some candidates that are out there, but I think the turnaround and the way that this team had it start, and then everyone looked at this team and said, okay, they're going to fall off at some point. And then they alternated wins and losses for 10 games. And then we questioned it, said, who are the Vancouver Canucks? And Rick Tocchet has been consistent in his messaging with his team. He's called out players when he needed to. He's been vocal in the dressing room when he needed to be. And with the media, I think he's been great, right? So the job that he's done, and obviously a credit goes to him and his coaching staff, but I definitely do think it's his to lose.
The final home game of the season used to be a sort of a, I don't know, therapeutic sort of moment for Canucks fans. It was sort of like we endured it. It's over. We're going to kind of miss you because we do like knowing you're around, but this has been really tough. It's a little different, right? It's nice to this is going to be a different vibe. I think it'll be a raucous night at Rogers Arena because they know it's the sending off party really to the playoffs.
Well, that, and you can win the division, right? I think that you go with that and you say, look, I've come on shows and said, if the Canucks blow the division, that's a huge, miss on their part for the season that they've had. I really do believe that. So you got to think that these guys are getting up for tonight. They want to take it into another gear. They know they haven't been playing that well lately, and the playoffs are right around the corner. So it should be a great game if you're Vancouver standpoint. You should see a team that's motivated. They want to get this done. They want to lock it up, and they want to do it in front of their home fans.
Do they want to win the conference? Do they care? That's still alive theoretically. Do you think anybody's thinking that in the dressing room?
I think it's alive, but with a little bit of help, maybe. I think, you take care of your next two games and you got a scoreboard watch a little bit. I think if you win the division right now, that's an important goal. That's one they probably did have heading into this season. I think the conference would be great. And obviously they're not going to win the President's Trophy, the Rangers winning it. But I think, the aspirations for that when they were in the mix were there. But I think the division was one of the more important ones.
Okay, rapid fire. Team MVP.
Quinn Hughes.
Best defenseman, Hughes, then, I guess.
Yes, sir.
Most exciting player.
Look, Quinn Hughes.
Here's the tough one.
Yeah.
Unsung hero.
Okay, so this one you kind of struggle with this one a little bit. Is it JT, but he's so consistent all the time? There could be some votes for Connor Garland with the way he's played late in this season. Dakota Joshua probably gets a little bit of love. I know Jeff Patterson tweeted out a while ago, it was Quinn Hughes all across the board, especially for what Quinn's getting paid, that he should be the unsung hero because it's so low. But you know what? I'll go and I will say, I'll say Dakota Joshua.
See, that's a protest vote from Patterson. He hates the terminology unsung. So you can interpret unsung as, he's too. You think Miller may get some unsung just because Hughes gets the team MVP?
Not a chance.
I think some fans may vote that way. They're like, we got to give JT something.
You got to give JT something, right? He's not going to win the MVP because it's going to be Quinn. He's not going to win the most exciting because it should be Quinn. He's not going to win best defenseman because he can't. So it's probably should be unsung. You know what's going to be weird? You know what will interest me is if Quinn Hughes ends up being the player across the board from the fan voting, what do the Canucks do as an organization?
Fair enough.
Right?
Well, I do wonder if there's someone in there who goes, guys, we have to change the name of Unsung Hero, or we have to change that award, period, simply because when that award was conceived, you weren't in a 24/7 media cycle where, you know, you've got so much chatter about the club on so many platforms. We talk about it every year. Everybody is sung on this team who does well. Connor Garland was literally sung at Rogers Arena when they were chanting his name. So there needs to be, and the, you know, criteria doesn't exactly spell it out. They leave it open for you to determine, which fair enough. We ask poll questions all the time with, you know, define it as you see fit. But I think now the club does have to point people in a more specific direction, perhaps with a different name.
JT Miller does get a trophy, the Cyrus McLean trophy for leading scorer. So he does get hardware tonight.
Yeah, but that's the one. Yeah, but that's the one that he's gonna. Like, he went and earned. This isn't the one the fans voted for.
Yeah, his third edition.
And Irf makes a good point. Like I do think there will be some fans who say, "Look, we've got to give JT. I've got to vote for JT Miller somewhere on my ballot." Buddy, you're in with Jeff Thursday
tonight. Yes, sir.
Marvelous. And throughout the playoffs, rink-wide Vancouver, they go live. They're on video, YouTube, right after, a few minutes after the final horn goes. Irf, thanks for this, buddy. Look forward to catching up next week when we got playoffs.
All right, gentlemen. Be well.
Hey, everybody. If you're enjoying what you're seeing here, then follow along with Sekeres Price on YouTube. I promise more content coming.
The kids call it subscribe on YouTube.
Well, how about liking it?
Do that as well. Smash it right now.